House of the Dragon, Season 3, Episode 1. Title: Salt and Sea, Fire and Blood. A big war. Death of a big dragon like Vermax. The end of Jacaerys Valerian. And a kiss between Alicent and Aemond. House of the Dragon is back, and as always, the story begins long before a single line of dialogue is spoken. The Season 3 premiere intro gives us a completely updated tapestry, and the changes are devastating. If you look closely at the bloodlines being woven, the vibrant gold of King's Landing is now choked out by ash, directly reflecting the horrific civilian fallout and starvation gripping the capital after the events of last season. But the most crucial detail is the new thread weaving its way across the narrow sea, a visual omen explicitly setting up the imminent catastrophic clash at the gullet. The board is reset, and the tapestry is bleeding. We cut immediately to the brutal, wind-swept mountains of the Vale, where Rhaena Targaryen's desperate hunt finally comes to an end. After weeks of tracking scorched sheep carcasses, she stands face to face with a monster, and successfully claims the wild dragon, Sheep Stealer. Now, let's talk about the massive book-to-screen divergence happening here, because George R.R. Martin purists are going to have a lot to say about this. In the text of Fire and Blood, Rhaena Targaryen never tames a wild beast in the Vale. Instead, she hatches a dragon egg into the slender, pale creature known as Morning. By giving Rhaena Sheep Stealer, the show has completely erased and merged the arc of a fan-favorite book character, Nettles. In the lore, Nettles was a fierce, foul-mouthed, and low-born dragon seed who didn't tame Sheep Stealer with Valyrian blood or magic, but through pure pragmatism. By feeding the dragon a freshly slaughtered sheep every single morning until it grew accustomed to her. By folding Nettles' narrative into Rhaena, the showrunners are giving Rhaena the martial power she desperately craved, but they are radically changing the thematic core of the story. In the books, Nettles proved that you don't need high-born Targaryen purity to ride a dragon. By giving that role to Rhaena, the show leans back into the myth of Valyrian exceptionalism. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the capital is pure paranoia. We shift to King's Landing, where a furious Prince Regent Aemond Targaryen has Grand Maester Orwyle backed against a wall, a blade practically pressed to his throat. The reason? The crippled King Aegon II has vanished from his sickbed, without a trace. On the surface, Aemond plays the part of the protective brother searching for his king. But visually, and psychologically, what we are seeing here is absolute political panic. Aemond knows that his grip on the Iron Throne is entirely illegitimate while his brother breathes. If Aegon is alive and in the hands of a rival faction, Aemond's status as regent is functionally worthless. He isn't worried about his brother's safety. He's terrified of losing his crown. So, where is the broken king? The camera takes us away from the Red Keep to a muddy, rain-slicked road. Aegon II and Larys Strong are in chains, held in the custody of House Staunton loyalists, who are secretly smuggling the injured king directly to Dragonstone to hand him over to Rhaenyra. To understand why this is a massive tactical disaster for the Greens, we have to look at why House Staunton is doing this. Their castle, Rook's Rest, was the site of the brutal dragon battle last season. During that siege, the Greens didn't just break their walls, they ruthlessly executed the Lord of House Staunton, leaving his family with a bitter, burning desire for vengeance. Bringing the shattered king to Rhaenyra is their ultimate act of retribution. Yet, even in chains, burnt, broken, and heavily sedated, Aegon's performance in this scene is mesmerizing. Despite being a helpless captive surrounded by enemies, he fiercely refuses to bow to Rhaenyra's name. He may be a king in chains, but the dragon's stubborn pride remains completely unbroken. We move from the muddy roads of Westeros straight into the gloomy chambers of Dragonstone. Rhaenyra Targaryen stands before her Black Council, formally briefing them on the secret pact she struck with Alicent Hightower at the end of last season. A deal where Alicent promised to effectively surrender the capital by opening the gates of King's Landing the moment Aemond and Vhagar fly out to war. But here, Rhaenyra commits a staggering, unforced tactical error. Believing the capital is already bought and paid for, she sends out a massive flurry of ravens across the Seven Kingdoms, broadly announcing the Blacks' imminent departure to claim the Iron Throne. It's a move born of overconfidence. Rhaenyra is playing a game of flawless political choreography, entirely blind to the fact that the stage back in King's Landing has already collapsed.
And that collapse is laid bare the moment we cut back to the Red Keep. Alicent Hightower returns to the capital, ready to execute her side of the bargain, only to discover the devastating truth. King Aegon II has been smuggled out of the city. The horror sets in immediately. Alicent's desperate promise to Rhaenyra to deliver a son for a son is now completely void. She has no leverage, no bargaining chip, and no way to stop the slaughter she so desperately tried to avert. In a state of absolute blind panic, she rushes to Aemond, practically begging her son to mount Vhagar and fly immediately to Harrenhal to counter Daemon's forces. She needs Aemond out of the city, not just for the war effort, but to cover up the fact that her grand peace treaty has utterly blown up in her face. This confrontation gives us a fascinating, deeply uncomfortable psychological look at the dynamic between Alicent and Aemond. Think back to last season. Aemond has spent his entire life deprived of genuine maternal warmth from Alicent, which is exactly why he sought out older maternal figures in the brothels of King's Landing to cope with his immense vulnerability. Now, look at how Alicent operates here. She isn't appealing to Aemond as a military commander. She is weaponizing that exact childhood emotional deficit. She plays the part of the doting, desperate mother, manipulating his deep-seated need for her approval to force him into action. It is a masterful, yet deeply tragic display of toxic family dynamics, with Alicent pulling the strings of a monster she helped create. We open this chapter on the open sea, where the ultimate chess piece of the Black faction is on full display. Lord Corlys Velaryon, the Sea Snake, stands on the deck of his flagship, patrolling the vital shipping lanes alongside his son, Alan of Hull. The visual storytelling here highlights the devastating, slow-burning horror of the Velaryon blockade. We don't just see warships, we see the systemic strangulation of King's Landing. By cutting off the gullet, Corlys has brought absolute starvation to the civilian population of the capital. It's a stark reminder that in this war, the small folk bleed, long before the dragons ever clash. From the sea, we plunge straight into the blood and mud of the Riverlands. Daemon Targaryen finally unleashes his newly forged army, sending them crashing directly into the Lannister host. And fighting alongside them are the legendary Winter Wolves. The brutal, battle-hardened Northmen Greybeards, who left their homes not to survive the winter, but to die a glorious death in battle. The climax of this clash brings a massive historical milestone: the violent death of Lord Jason Lannister. This isn't just a tactical blow to the Greens, it's a total dismantling of House Lannister's pride. But the real architectural mastermind behind this victory is Daemon Targaryen. To understand how easily Daemon orchestrates this slaughter, we have to look at his unrivaled battle experience. Daemon isn't a tourney knight. He is a veteran of the bloody, decade-long campaigns in the Stepstones, where he fought asymmetric trench warfare against the crab feeder. Furthermore,
His dragon, Caraxes, carries a terrifying combat legacy of its own. Long before Daemon claimed him, Caraxes was the mount of Prince Aemon Targaryen, the dragon prince who used the beast to burn Dornish fleets during the Fourth Dornish War. Caraxes is a weapon entirely optimized for war, and against the Lannister ground troops, it's a complete massacre. Meanwhile, miles away from the victory at the Red Fork, we check in on the remnants of the Green Army. Sir Criston Cole and Sir Gawain Hightower are marching their exhausted ground forces toward Harrenhal. The chivalry of the early seasons is completely gone. Cole's men are now openly committing horrific atrocities against local villagers, just to scrape together supplies. Look closely at Criston Cole in these scenes. What we are witnessing is a profound psychological death spiral. Ever since witnessing the literal cosmic horror of dragon warfare at Rook's Rest last season, Cole's world has been entirely shattered. He no longer cares about honor, the handship, or the chivalric principles he once weaponized. The sheer, indiscriminate terror of dragonfire has exposed the futility of human knights, leaving Cole completely nihilistic. He isn't marching to win a war anymore. He is actively welcoming death, dragging his men through the dirt in search of an end to the nightmare. We return to the cursed lands surrounding Harrenhal. In the dense, suffocating forests, the newly appointed dragon seeds, Ulf the White, Hugh Hammer, and Adam of Hull, lie in wait, attempting to set a desperate ambush for Aemond and Vhagar. Ulf breaks the tense silence by boasting about an Essos Red priest who once prophesied he was born for true greatness. But the woods hold older secrets. This scene delivers a massive lore drop with the first appearance of the Green Men, the ancient, sacred order of lion-faced guardians who protect the Isle of Faces in the center of the God's Eye Lake. Before the dragon seeds can even process what they are seeing, Alice Rivers manifests out of the shadows. She delivers a chilling, cryptic warning. They are wasting their time lurking in the trees, because they are completely missing the true battle that is already unfolding across the realm. We fly south to the Reach, where a raven from King's Landing arrives at the seat of House Hightower, carrying Alicent's urgent command to Ormond Hightower. For book fans, this is the moment we have been waiting for. Our first proper look at Daeron Targaryen, Alicent's youngest and most overlooked son, alongside his striking cobalt-blue dragon, Tessarion, known across the lore as the Blue Queen. While the rest of his family has been tearing the capital apart, Daeron has been quietly growing into a capable, chivalrous commander in Old Town. With the Reach army officially on the march, the Greens have just unleashed a beautiful, deadly wild card into the skies. Back in the claustrophobic halls of the Red Keep, the psychological warfare reaches a boiling point. Helena Targaryen whispers a haunting truth to her mother. Beneath all the posture and cruelty, Aemond is secretly terrified. Armed with this knowledge, Alicent confronts the Prince Regent. She mercilessly weaponizes his childhood vulnerabilities, reminding him of the bullied, one-eyed boy who had to steal Vhagar just to feel safe, exposing the fact that he relies on the dragon to conquer his own crippling fear. By stripping away his armor of terror, Alicent backs the most dangerous man in Westeros completely into a corner. We close this chapter by shifting focus back to the water. At the mouth of the gullet, Tywin Lannister finally returns from Essos, accompanied by the massive, terrifying war fleet of the Triarchy, commanded by the eccentric and flamboyant Admiral Shirako Lohar. Tywin attempts to dictate terms, urging an immediate, coordinated aerial and naval strike on Dragonstone itself. But Admiral Lohar completely rejects the Westerosi strategy. Lohar decides instead to bypass the Dragon Fortress and strike directly at Corlys's ancestral home of High Tide on Driftmark,
aiming to break the sea snake's legendary spirit by burning his legacy to the ground. To understand why Lohar is entirely uninterested in Tylan's orders, we have to look back at the bitter 20-year blood feud between Corlys Velaryon and the Triarchy. This isn't just a political alliance for them, it's deeply personal. Decades ago, Corlys and Daemon waged an illegal, bloody war in the Stepstones, decimating the Triarchy's forces and brutally executing their commander, the Crab Feeder. The Triarchy has waited a generation for payback against the Sea Snake, and they aren't here to win Aegon his throne. They are here for absolute vengeance. The tension that has been building all episode finally explodes. Word reaches the war room at Dragonstone that the massive Triarchy fleet has launched a devastating surprise ambush on the Valyrian blockade. In an instant, the horrifying reality sets in for Rhaenyra Targaryen. She realizes that Alicent's desperate peace offering from the capital was nothing more than a catastrophic, accidental trap. By taking Alicent at her word and preparing to march on King's Landing, Rhaenyra left her flank completely exposed. But the true crisis of authority happens within her own walls. In a striking, unprecedented display of political weakness, Rhaenyra's own Black Council openly defies her. Fearing the loss of their queen, they vote to confine her directly to her chambers for her own safety. The woman who would sit on the Iron Throne is reduced to a prisoner in her own castle, completely grounded while her realm burns. With the queen locked away and the leadership vacuum wide open, youth and recklessness take the reins. Driven by raw, unchecked adrenaline and a complete lack of actual military command experience, Prince Jacaerys Velaryon and Baela Targaryen refuse to sit by. They sprint to the dragon pits, mounting Vermax and Moondancer, and plunge headfirst into the raging naval conflict below. It is a sequence defined by cinematic majesty, but deep narrative dread. Two young heirs, flying straight into a meat grinder, entirely unaware of what actual warfare looks like. The moment the dragons break through the clouds, the illusion of aerial supremacy is completely shattered. The Triarchy forces are not the helpless small folk of the Riverlands. They prove they are heavily prepared for dragonfire, having spent years fighting the deadly aerial assaults of Daemon and Laenor Targaryen during the Stepstones campaigns. The skies become a wall of iron. Jace's dragon, Vermax, is immediately and heavily pressured by a relentless barrage of anti-dragon scorpion artillery tearing through the air. Down on the water, however, the old master of the sea shows why he is a legend. Realizing his fleet is being overwhelmed by sheer numbers, Lord Corlys Velaryon executes a brilliant, high-stakes tactical naval maneuver. He deliberately guides his massive flagship through a perilous, incredibly narrow rocky strait. The Triarchy ships, blinded by bloodlust, take the bait and follow him, allowing Corlys to successfully bottleneck and trap a massive cluster of enemy warships, turning the narrow channel into a kill zone. Just as the naval trap closes, a wild card screams into the airspace. Rhaenyra Targaryen arrives at the apex of the battle, atop the wild dragon Sheepstealer. But this is no calculated military intervention. The completely untamed, primitive beast immediately succumbs to pure, chaotic bloodlust, indiscriminately breathing fire and burning friend and foe alike on the waters below. This terrifying sequence brings us right back to King Viserys' iconic warning to Rhaenyra all the way back in Season 1. The profound truth that the idea that Valyrians actually control dragons is nothing more than a dangerous illusion. Historically, this echoes the darkest moments of Targaryen lore. We are reminded of Aegon the Conqueror, who, despite wielding the supreme martial power of Balerion the Black Dread, still lost his beloved sister Rhaenys and her dragon Meraxes to a lucky scorpion bolt in Dorne. Dragons are gods of destruction, But as Sheepstealer proves here, they are never a guaranteed ticket to a clean victory. While Corlys Velaryon is entirely distracted trying to manage the chaos of the main fleet, the Triarchy's brutal secondary objective is achieved. Several warships successfully slip past the blockade lines, anchoring at Driftmark and setting the magnificent ancestral castle of High Tide completely ablaze. Back on the waves, the conflict turns into a bloodbath on wood. Admiral Sharako Lohar's flagship ruthlessly rams the Sea Snake's vessel, leading to a savage boarding action. In the middle of the carnage, Alan of Hull steps into the light, engaging in a fierce, desperate duel and killing Admiral Lohar right on the deck. But the victory is instantly hollow. As the smoke clears from the shattered wreckage, Lord Corlys Velaryon is nowhere to be found, missing and feared dead. But the true tragedy of the gullet is reserved for the skies. Caught in the blinding, choking sheets of black smoke kicked up by Sheepstealer's indiscriminate burning, Prince Jacaerys frantically tries to maneuver Vermax away from the floating, burning wreckage. He never sees the shot coming. A massive, iron Triarchy defensive prong pierces Vermax squarely through the neck, sending the young dragon crashing violently into the boiling sea. Miraculously, Jace manages to unstrap himself and surface from the water, clinging to a piece of debris. For a fleeting second, you think he might survive, but the Myrish archers aboard the surrounding Triarchy ships spot the silver-haired prince, ruthlessly targeting him and executing the heir to the Black Throne under a brutal volley of arrows. Rhaenyra has now lost Luke, her father, her birthright, and now Jace. The grief twists into something far more dangerous. The stage is officially set for the remainder of Season 3 as the tragic, broken queen takes her first definitive steps down the dark path of true Targaryen madness. For more videos, please subscribe to the channel, and if you like this video, don't forget to like and share it. Thanks for watching Purjosh TV.